How's it going, everybody? I'm back. I'm making this video because I've had people still ask me they don't know the difference between traveling and driving. So I'm gonna do this video for that and some Fourth and Fifth Amendment cases, and some other stuff that hopefully you guys will like. I found here in California and some other states as well. Now, of course, I'm not an attorney. This is not legal advice. If you want legal advice, go get yourself a competent attorney. And please always verify whatever you get off the internet, because in the end, if you use the information, it's only going to affect you and nobody else. So let's get started. I'm not going to do the case citations here. I'll just pause it and look it up if you want. I got a lot of stuff here, so we need to hurry up. Okay, courts are not at liberty to extend application of law to subjects not included within it. In California, a license is defined as a permit granted by an appropriate governmental body, generally for consideration to a person or firm or corporation to pursue some occupation or to carry on some business subject to regulation under the police power. When the statutory language is clear and there is no uncertainty as to the legislative intent, we look no further and enforce the statute according to its terms. Words should not be read into a statute that are not there. Of course, I haven't slept all night. It's 5:23 a.m. so my voice is kind of giving out. I mean, I've made this video I don't know how many times now. Okay, California Vehicle Code, Article 1, blah blah blah. It says, what's subject to registration? A vehicle cannot be a consumer goods and equipment at the same time. Operation of a motor vehicle upon public streets and highways is not a mere privilege, but is a right or liberty protected by the guarantees of federal and state constitutions. I've used some of this before in my motions, my brief. So, highways are for the use of the traveling public, and all have the right to use them in a reasonable and proper manner. The use thereof is an inalienable or inalienable, however you want to pronounce that, right of every citizen. Users of the highway for transportation of persons and property for hire may be subjected to special regulations not applicable to those using the highway for public purposes. Constitutionally protected liberty includes the right to travel. A citizen may have the right under the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States to travel and transport his property upon the public highway by auto vehicle, but he has no right to make the highways his place of business by using them as a common carrier for hire, such as being a privilege which may be granted or withheld by the state in its discretion without violating the due process or equal protection clauses. The license charge. Oh, here, this is interesting. The license charge imposed by the Motor Vehicle Act is an excise or privilege tax established for the purpose of revenue in order to provide a fund for roads while under the dominion of the state authorities. It is not a tax imposed as a rental charge or a toll charge for the use of the highways, owned and controlled by the state. Our decisions recognize no exception to the rule that illegally seized evidence is inadmissible at trial, however relevant and trustworthy the seized evidence may be as an item of proof. Fingerprint evidence is no exception to the rule that all evidence obtained by searches and seizures in violation of the Constitution is inadmissible in a state court. The Fourth Amendment applies to involuntary detention occurring at the investigatory stage as well as the accusatory stage. Investigatory is usually when you're getting stopped for speeding or whatever the case may be. Detentions for the sole purpose of obtaining fingerprints are subject to the constraints of the Fourth Amendment. I remember Charlie telling me about this and saying how he also had or was going to sue or had sued, something to that effect, and that I could do the same, or anybody could do the same, because when they want to take your fingerprints, they need a warrant because it's private property. The use of the automobile as a necessary adjunct to the earning of a livelihood in modern life requires us, in the interest of realism, to conclude that the right to use an automobile on the public highways partakes of the nature of a liberty within the meaning of the constitutional guarantees. California Vehicle Code 17459. This is interesting as well. The acceptance by a resident of this state of a certificate of ownership or a certificate of registration of any motor vehicle or any renewal thereof issued under the provision of this code shall constitute the consent by the person that service of summons may be made upon him within or without this state, whether or not he is then a resident of this state, in any action brought in the courts of this state upon a cause of action arising in this state out of the ownership or operation of the vehicle. The Fourth Amendment, of course, applies to all seizures of the now this is different, okay? The Fourth Amendment, of course, applies to all seizures of the person, including seizures that involve only a brief detention short of traditional arrest. Traffic stop, maybe? Terry, Ohio, right there. Whenever a police officer accosts an individual and restrains his freedom to walk away, he has seized that person, and the Fourth Amendment requires that the seizure be reasonable, and of course they never usually are. The right of the citizen to drive on the public street with freedom from police interference unless he is engaged in suspicious conduct associated in some manner with, here's a key word, criminality, is a fundamental constitutional right which must be protected by the courts. The right to travel on the public highways is a constitutional right. The right to travel is part of the liberty that a citizen cannot be deprived without due process of law. A citizen may have the right under the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States to travel and transport his property upon the public highways by auto vehicle, but he has no right to make the highways his place of business by using them as a common carrier for hire, such as being a privilege which may be granted or withheld by the state in its discretion without violating the due process or equal protection clauses. One who drives an automobile is an operator within the meaning of the Motor Vehicle Act. Oh, by the way, you might want to look that up. It's very interesting. The word operator shall not include any person who solely transports his own property and who transport no persons or property for hire or compensation. The right of a citizen to travel upon the public highways and to transport his property thereon by horse-drawn carriage, wagon, or automobile is not a mere privilege which may be permitted or prohibited at will, but a common right which he has under his right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and affirmed by the Supreme Court in Thompson v. Smith. That's a good case too. California Vehicle Code 17459. The acceptance by a resident of this state of a certificate of ownership or a certificate of registration of any motor vehicle or any renewal thereof issued under the provision of this code shall constitute the consent by the person that service of summons may be made upon him within or without this state, whether or not he is then a resident of this state, in any action brought in the courts of this state upon a cause of action arising in this state out of the ownership or operation of the vehicle. California Vehicle Code. Now this is the most interesting one, of course. California Vehicle Code 17460. The acceptance or retention by a resident of this state of a driver's license issued pursuant to the provision of this code shall constitute the consent of the person that service of summons may be made upon him within or without this state, whether or not he is then a resident of the state, in any action brought in the courts of this state upon a cause of action arising in this state out of his operation of a motor vehicle anywhere within the state. California Vehicle Code. When a person applies for and accepts a license or permit, he in effect knows the limitations of it and takes it at the risk and consequences of transgression. Hale versus Henkel. This is very interesting as well. We are of the opinion that there is a clear distinction in this particular between an individual and a corporation, and the latter, meaning the corporation, has no right to refuse to submit its books and papers for an examination at the suit of the state. The individual may stand upon his constitutional rights as a citizen. He is entitled to carry on his private business in his own way. His power to contract is unlimited. He owes no duty to the state or to his neighbors to divulge his business or to open his doors to an investigation, so far as it may tend to incriminate him. He owes no such duty to the state, since he receives nothing therefrom, beyond the protection of his life and property. His rights are such as existed by the law of the land long antecedent to the organization of the state, and can only be taken from him by due process of law, and in accordance with the Constitution. Among his rights are a refusal to incriminate himself, and the immunity of himself and his property from arrest and seizure, except under a warrant of the law. He owes nothing to the public so long as he does not trespass upon their rights. Upon the other hand, the corporation is a creature of the state. Okay, this is the best ones. I think it's already towards the end. An officer who acts in violation of the Constitution ceases to represent the government. Keep that in mind, folks. This is the one I'm using the judge here in Glendale, so if you guys are watching this and are cops, go tell your buddy. State judges as well as federal have the responsibility to respect and protect persons from violations of federal constitutional rights. I told him I was going to take him to federal court. Doesn't believe me, but only time will tell who knows what they're doing and who doesn't. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and please leave me comments. I just hope you guys keep in mind this is not legal advice, and I will be making another video because I have some more information that I need to post. So you guys have a good one.